So again, another official hello and welcome to everyone joining us today. I would just like to introduce myself quickly. My name is Candice Buckle and I work as Content Marketing Manager at Container Exchange. I'm also the person who investigated and wrote our third report that we will be discussing today. So yeah, it's a great honor to be moderating this webinar as well. Joining us today, we have some really special speakers that I'll get to in a moment, but just a quick rundown for everyone online. Just going to go through what we can expect today. So today we will be giving you a detailed rundown on the current shipping container market. We'll also be talking about why SOC containers are in great demand currently and what makes them a good alternative. I will also be giving an overview of the key results of our report. We'll also be ending off with a customer success story. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A with everyone and conduct our knowledge sharing with 100+ container logistics companies. So yeah, it's going to be a good one. So joining us today, our first speaker is John Fossey, who is head analyst at Drewry, who, for those of you who don't know, Drewry is a neutral, independent maritime consultancy. So we're very excited to hear John and hear him talk about the global container production and the ownership of the global container pool to kind of give a bit of context on when we conducted our report and why. Next, we'll have our co-founder and CEO, Dr. Johannes Schlingmeier. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your surname. It's just my South African accent. He'll be, got a thumbs up there. He'll be talking about what SOCs are and their current demand. And he'll also let us know a bit about the idea behind his company, Container Exchange. The third session I'll be conducting where I'll be talking about our key results of the report and how SOCs are growing in awareness and acceptance. And lastly, but not least, we'll have Alex, the CEO of Conway Group and one of our customers at Container Exchange. He'll be talking about his company, Conway Group, and how Conway uses SOC containers and the benefits. So yeah, that's what you can expect today. Kicking it off though, before we get into the thick of it, we'll be conducting a quick poll for our viewers. We're going to go ahead and ask 3 questions. Go ahead and choose your answer. And then in about 15 minutes time in my session, we'll go over the answers to see how many of them you knew before this session. So let's take it away with poll number 1. Lyra.
Yeah.
Awesome. So number 1, how does SOC compare to COC? The options are A, SOCs are smaller than COCs, B, COCs involve less admin, and C, SOCs are operated by the shipper, COCs are owned by the carrier.
Okay, a couple of more seconds for everyone to answer.
Also, no one will know what you voted, so feel free to be incorrect and you won't be outed. Cool. I think we can move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Number 2, what is the greatest advantage of SOC containers? Our options are A, avoid demurrage and detention charges and overcome equipment scarcity. Number 2, cheaper than COCs in general. And number 3, cheaper than COCs to surplus or special locations.
A couple of more seconds left. And we move to the next one.
Awesome. Question number 3. What do you think is the biggest pandemic-related impact for the increase in SOC awareness and acceptance? So even though some of them may be correct, more than one may be correct, there is one answer that is more correct than the others. So A, change of demand, B, container shortage crisis, C, SOC in the media, and D, platforms like Exchange.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Vera. We'll go over those correct answers a little bit later. So thank you for voting. Okay, I think we're going to head on to our first session with John and Drewry. John, I'll just, as discussed, share your slides and you can just tell me exactly which one to go to. So just to create some context for our report, Drewry will now give us a rundown on the container production market. Last month, they actually also hosted their own webinar on the same topic. So they're going to just be sharing their slides with us as a neutral, independent consultancy. John, could you just share with our viewers the main findings from the container shipping demand data? I think it's here on page 3.
That is correct, Candice. Thank you very much, and thank you for Container Exchange for inviting Drewry to participate in this webinar. So I'm just going to kick off by just giving a little bit of perspective as to what happened in the container shipping market in 2021, and then obviously to look ahead at how we see the market developing up until 2025. Last we measured this in terms of container handling activity, and in 2021 there was a sharp recovery compared to 2020, with the container handling activity increasing by about 6.5% and approximately 850 million TEU being handled. The growth was actually slightly slower as the year progressed. At the end of the first half of the year, Drewry had seen an increase for the full year of 8%, but as it turned out, that was reduced to 6.5%. And in 2022, we also see a slower rate of growth with approximately 4.5% more containers being handled. But as you can see from these blue bars, we do see an increase in amount of activity up to 2025, when around about 978 million TEU will be handled. In terms of the market conditions last year, well, a lot of the increase was due to a boom in consumer durable goods. This really kicked off from the middle of the year and then started to increase as the year progressed. But gradually, we saw spending, discretionary spending, move a little bit more to the services and the travel and the leisure industries. And that was the reason why that consumer boom came off of a slight high. Now, beyond 2022, we see an average annual increase in port handling activity of about 3%. Having said this, we made the forecast at the end of 2021. And since that time, we encountered the Ukraine-Russia crisis. We've seen a spike in inflationary tendencies as well. So if anything, we're being a little bit more cautious, and therefore some of that growth I've just mentioned may be slightly slower than anticipated.
Got it. Understood. And John, what has changed in production of containers in 2021, and what is your expectation for 2022 in the production per se? I think it'll be on page 4.
Okay, so in 2021, we saw a sharp increase in the amount of production, particularly out of China. Over 6.6 million TEU of dry freight containers were produced last year, and around about 386,000 reefer containers, and that was a record on both counts. What was also interesting, and this reflected some of the equipment availability issues in the market, or the lack of availability of equipment, I should say, in that over 85% of that dry freight production was in 40-foot high cube containers.
Interesting.
The market was also driven by the ocean carriers needing more of this equipment to move those consumer goods out of China. From the fourth quarter, though, we did see a slight slowdown in production activities, and we do expect this to continue into 2022, with our forecast currently being in the 4 to 4.5 million TEU range. So that would be substantially down on the 7.1 million TEU that was produced in 2021.
Got it. Okay. And could you also give us a quick rundown of container equipment availability in 2021? I think that's
okay.
in slide 2.
Yeah, if we move on, I think we need to move on a couple of slides. We've got something there that illustrates this, and the next one I think it is as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, effectively, we measure container availability in by two ratios at Drewry. We look at the vessel slot ratio, and we also look at the productivity of containers in terms of the number of port moves made by that container each year. And what we saw was, when it came to the ratio of containers per slot capacity, that increased from 1.77 in 2020 to 1.93 in 2021. And we actually expect that to increase further this year to about 1.94 to 1.95. In terms of the number of port moves made by container in 2021, that fell to 17.8, and that compared with 19.1 in 2020. And if we were to look at the average over the period between 2015 and 2018, then that number would have been 20 plus. So there was a significant reduction in productivity levels last year, and that was to do with the congestion, not only in ports, but in warehousing, on landside supply chains as well. So containers were on the whole, in our estimate, 20 to 25% less productive in 2021 than they were pre-pandemic levels. And with all the issues that currently continue to prevail in the industry, congestion, this Ukraine-Russia crisis, we don't expect any easing in supply chain congestion, or no significant easing in supply chain congestion, until latter part of this year and even into the first part of 2023.
Yes, exactly. I think we are forecasting a similar thing at Container Exchange as well. So looks like there's going to be a lot of congestion as we move on to the second half of this year. John, I'm not sure, I don't actually have the slides for this, but I wanted to ask you, what were the prices of a standard 20 DC or 40 high cube container at the end of 2021? Do you have that data to share with us?
I think I can give you some intelligence on that. Yes. Well, obviously, throughout the year, container prices, and particularly for standard 20 and 40-foot high cubes, increased significantly. So in the fourth quarter of last year, a standard 20-foot container was costing around about $3,375 US. And that was that compared with 2,160 at the end of 2020, and just $1,650 US at the end of 2019. what we have seen actually is that there's been a slight coming off of that high value in the first quarter or in the first couple of months of this year. And we will have a full data set in the next couple of weeks or so, but currently our estimate is that a 20-foot dry freight standard container is retailing for about $2,950, $2,975 US.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. It was really good to see exactly, how congested the container market was when we did conduct our study, which was in the fourth quarter of 2021. So thank you again for taking the time to chat with us and going through this with us. And as Lyra said in the chat, you can find John Fossey's LinkedIn in the chat. And also, if you have any questions to ask him, please do feel free to post them in the Q&A. Thanks again, John.
That's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.